Welcome to Writing in the Real World, the podcast that explores the kinds of writing done in the jobs you aspire to do. I'm your host, Marina Gabor. In today's episode, I'll be talking with video producer Ian Connel about his career ups and downs as a video producer and the kinds of writing that are involved in video production. This episode is sponsored by Summit Writing Academy. Improve your writing in less time. Go to summitwriting.net for your free 14-day trial. You can find the show notes for this episode at summitwriting.net/WITRW/S2E1. Without further ado, let's dive in. I saw on your site that you were doing some sort of mud race or something.
Was that my site or the CPPS site?
Oh, it might have been the CPPS site.
Yeah, I haven't done that since that year. Was that 2017 or 2018? It might have been 2018. Yeah, I like those. I miss those. Yeah, that was the only one I've ever done. My wife's done 2 or 3. And
okay.
Cool to do one together.
Neat. So what prompted you to do that? Get muddy?
But boy, maybe it was that I could win. I had a friend at work who loved those, and he'd do several a year, and I was like, sure, I'll train. I had just figured out how to run again, having gotten through chronic pelvic pain syndrome, and yeah, that was like a way to celebrate. And I was like, whatever, if I go slow, I go fast. Let's do this thing. Yeah, I'd been through. I did 8 years of MMA training, and I was like, if I can make it through their tournaments, I can make it through a race, right? And we had a great time. So
wow, cool.
Yeah.
So you did MMA training. Do you still do that?
I wish. I gave it up 3 years ago. We had a second child, and I was like, my master's master, he had this podcast with Joe Rogan, and I had heard it twice. And in there, he said, if you're going to be a fighter, you have to fight. If you're going to be a writer, you have to write. And I was like, oh, thank you for speaking directly to me. Like, I'm spending 2 to 3 nights doing this thing and not any nights doing writing. And I was like, but I'm not going to do this for a career. I would like to write for a career. So I thought that's what I need to do. And then I've only begun writing this summer consistently. Yeah, it's kind of shameful. Yeah.
Well, we'll dig into that more in a bit. Thinking about these things and life changes and so on, is there some project you tried or something that let's try to be relatable here? People try stuff, fall on their face.
Sure.
Anything you're willing to share?
Yeah.
Can get us.
I definitely have one. I wrote my first novel 7 or 8 years ago, and it's not fair to call it a novel. Let's call it a novel manuscript. I spent 5 years revising it 3 times, or maybe it was more than that. And then and when I finally was all done with that, I sent it to 2 or 3 people, and I wouldn't hear back from them. And then I'd bug them and bug them. They're like, I just couldn't make it through the first chapter. I was like, oh, okay.
Oh,
and,
no.
Yeah, it was a bad book. There were some fun ideas, I guess, but yeah. For first work, it's just, and part of the problem with that, I think I later discovered reading some Stephen King, his book on writing is,
it's like, excellent.
Yeah, I liked it. One of the things I learned from him was he can tell when a work is begun at one time and then picked up later. And there's more problems with that. There's me being a total noob and things like that. But yeah, like if I write another book, I'm gonna just sit down and finish it in a month.
Do you ever do that NaNoWriMo?
No, I'm always tempted. That sounds amazing. But no, maybe next year I could do it. Like I'm starting to just figure out I can write in the evenings and but yeah. How about you?
Nice. Yes, I wrote a novella in high school. That was a very long time ago at the prompting of a friend who she would type it out for me. This is like now I'm really dating myself. I don't think we had a computer then.
Oh yeah.
And so I'd handwrite and she'd type stuff and then she'd say, well, what's going to happen next? What's going to happen next? And so she forced me to finish it. Never did anything with it. And one day I have a series in my head. We'll see if it comes out. But like you said, kind of like you with your fighting and your writing, what do you choose?
Yeah.
And different seasons, different seasons for different things.
Sure.
But thank you for sharing that story. It's good to know that writing doesn't just happen. And now that you've got that first one under your belt, so you've done one, right? And
Actually done two.
A ton of stuff. You've done a few?
I did a second one. And I mentored this kid through Big Brothers Big Sisters for 7 years, and I had him read it. And I mean, he didn't read a lot of books, admittedly. He's super into sports, but so he was pretty supportive of me. Was it good? It was better than the first book and was a lot shorter than the first book. But as I look back on that one, I think that would be better as like a video or like a YouTube series or even a show. So yeah.
Cool. Yeah. So just over time, keep writing more stuff. Yes. And picking up new techniques. And I think, like you said, the writing that you did a couple of years ago, if you were to pick that up now, you have different perspective, different view on life. It's always good to name and date your stuff. Have you ever looked back at stuff and thought, wow, this is actually not bad, but did I write it or did I, where did I get this from?
Yeah. Yeah, it's been a while since I've done anything like that. But yeah, once in a while there's a sentence in there that's like, oh, that's pretty good. Now it's learning to put them all together into one coherent story. Like one of my challenges for myself now will just be a short story that isn't biting off more than I can chew.
Right.
And gets done.
Yes, that's exactly the thing. Well, in your work as what should we call what is your career title?
Video production.
Okay, video production.
Yeah.
You need to do stories. I saw on your website that you do storyboarding, you write the scripts, and you had, let me see, I made a note here. Nobody's favorite movie would exist without a script. Love it. Totally Thanks. True. And you're writing those scripts. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, they're not Hollywood screenplays, but even your marketing videos for a small business, they do so much better if you write it out first. Don't just show up with a camera and I'll get some shots of the business and we'll make this interesting somehow afterward. That's a terrible idea. In fact, that was the basis for me getting into this. I was like, well, that's the one thing I can do better than most.
Right.
Is find out what sells about this business and what's interesting. And start from that, not start from pretty shots.
Right. So what is your creative process then? So how do you get from idea to your script and finished video?
Sure. Are you thinking with regard to like marketing videos, like my business?
Yeah, I'm just thinking like, what is your writing process? So if somebody's watching this and they're thinking, hey, this sounds like a really cool thing. Do I have the writing skills for it? What kind of writing skills do I need? What kinds of things could I be doing to develop those? Just sort of a behind the scenes look at the kinds of skills that are required for that.
Sure. I like to depend on a script template because there are pieces of it. I get so excited with an idea that I'll write the idea and then I won't remember to make, say, a thumbnail for the video or figure out which tags, or a really good idea, especially online with all the competition for attention, is to start with a good headline and then fit the rest of your content to that, which helps me because I try to fit too many ideas into one story. So I go down this template and fill those things out and then do an outline. Sometimes I just go ahead and write a first draft, but then you end up reorganizing it in an outline. And then revisions. If you're willing to do revisions, it'll get better. It'll turn out into something good. You just have to be willing to stick with it sometimes when you hate it.
So revisions are key. And I know that has been, if you look at any writer, that's the thing.
Yeah.
It's the writing is in the revision, right? So you come with your idea, and then some people think that, you sit down and you write your novel, or you write your script, or you write your short story or whatever, and boom, it should be just brilliance on the page one time, right?
Yeah.
But then interesting that you said, you keep at it even when you hate it.
Yeah. Um, I have abandoned enough of them to be ashamed. But now it's like, no, this is a point of pride. If you're going to start this, you're going to finish it. Sometimes that means making it significantly shorter,
Mm.
um,
Mhm.
or visually simpler, so I can just turn it out in like a day. Um, yeah. I don't know where else I'm going with that right now. But
That's okay. That is okay. Yeah, the heart of every great video is a great story. How do you discover that story?
well, that's research. Um, and in the marketing world, that's typically talking to your client's client, because they're the one you really need to speak to.
Ah,
Um, and yeah, every chance I get, I ask them, "Can I talk to some of your clients?" Most of them are like, "Oh, can't do that," or "Well, we don't really have contacts." Um, and once in a while, they really do know their business well enough to know, like, no, why people pay for us is because we do everything and we save them 4 phone calls. Um, Sometimes they really do, and then I'm like suspicious of that, and I should trust them, so I still want to talk to their customers, and then the customers will verify that. Like, yeah, this made everything a lot simpler. Um, but yeah, a standard questions list. I mean, if you had nothing else, going off the journalist's basics: who, what, why, when, where, how. Uh, that'll get you 80% of the way, because you'll see, okay, there's a gap here, I need to fill that in. There's a gap here, I
mm,
need to ask
mhm.
questions about that. Um, and then, yeah, what is it people are really buying? What do they really want in this? Even if it's banal, even if I can't appreciate it because I would never buy that. That's a challenge, is putting yourself in their mind frame. Like, I've got a friend who he loves snakes. He is driving to Wausau, Wisconsin. That's 2.5 hours from us today to pick up a snake.
Ooh.
Uh, no, I think 2 of them. And I'm like, yeah, a dog someday, and then like snakes. But yeah, he loves them, and
Mm.
I'd have to get into his mindset as best I can, um, and use his language if I were to write about why you should buy this snake. Um, but yeah, lots of questions. I just ask a zillion questions.
And then
Yeah.
when you're shaping the story, do you have like there's sort of a general story arc? Do you have a template that you generally use and then you plug those in, or what's your process in?
Well, I'm trying to be like, do you know who Joseph Sugarman is?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good for you. This must be a copywriter thing, huh?
Yeah.
He said you give it some time and then it'll come to you. I'm trying to be like that, but sometimes you don't have that luxury. And just I'll belt out 3 different angles, just jam
Mm,
out a paragraph like, oh, it could be like this,
mhm.
um, and look back at them, and then I think in that case there are different psychological triggers that different audiences like to see. Like, we made commercials for MGM Liquors locally last month, and they knew right from the start everything's about price. So Sugarman would call that the greed trigger. You can get this vodka at this price.
Right.
So that's done for you. But otherwise, yeah, it's taking a look at, do these people require authority to overcome their objections, or what about a good
Oh,
story, or just proving that you are one of them? It's kind of like the identity trigger.
right.
Uh, yeah, I wish I could tell you something more concrete
That's
than
okay.
this. I'm still working it out. But
Uh-huh.
yeah, and there are copywriting fundamentals. A
Right.
great headline, simplicity, it flows. Yeah, that's another place where revision really is great.
So is it sort of this merging of copywriting and storytelling? Because I would think it's not just storytelling, there's an infusion of that copywriting.
Yes. Where video is concerned, you've got this, at least I see it as a divergence. You have videos that are completely scripted, so
Mhm.
you can write those and revise those as much as you want, or they're the ones that are dependent on interviews. And And then to add more chaos to that, you don't know necessarily what shots you're going to get. You know, if you've got a studio, you can control all of these shots, and you've got an infinite budget, you can make anything, but usually you
Right.
don't. So you go up on site. Ideally, you've been there before and you know how this business runs. So you know roughly what shots to get, but that you won't get them all. And some of them will be uglier than you think.
Huh.
So in the case of the interview one, it's like having sentences written for you, and you need to form them into a coherent story in the edit.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I'm still chewing on how that works. Like visually, it still can work very well. People like video.
Right.
But I suppose in that sense, it'll never be as in-depth as having written it from scratch. Or very rarely. But, you know, sometimes all you need to show is like this shoe. This is the new Air Jordan. You
Right.
identify with Air Jordan. That's good enough. Yeah.
So sometimes it's the, like you said, with that shoe. So if I'm into those kind of shoes, I'm making my own story
Yes.
based on.
Yeah. And that's where images, they leave so much for you to fill in. Yeah, and I know brands like Supreme, the clothing brand. I don't even know if they use much copy at all. They just show pictures of stuff, and they're like, "We're New York hipster cool." And then I did some copywriting for a martial arts brand. Who was that? Super Rare, and they wanted to do that, and I thought that was a bad idea. It's fine for their apparel. You can show a cool shirt with Muhammad Ali on it, and that's probably good enough.
Right.
I tried to add some flavor to that by giving just a little history of Muhammad Ali in a real not tongue-in-cheek, but stylish way.
Right.
But like if you're looking at their gloves, you need to know what they're made of. You need to know how well they're stitched. You need to know the weight, because you have different weights for different tournament classes. And they'd have the weight in there, but they wouldn't have a lot of technical details, whereas Amazon knows the more info you have in there, the better it sells. So yeah, there are times when you can let people's imagination fill in the details, and there are times when you need to provide that.
Provide them. Well, especially I guess if they're technical things that are going to matter to that person as far as getting them to buy it.
Yeah.
Is there something where you've ever thought you'd written something well, and then after the fact you looked at it and thought, oh dear, that's not exactly what I meant? Any bloopers?
Yeah, there is.
I mean, you can share it or not.
No, it's fine. There's two. Let me tell you a funny one first.
Okay.
When I was on, No, it wasn't our honeymoon. I was on a vacation with my wife. Actually, I don't think we were married then. We were in, what's the famous island off of Mexico? Shucks. I should know that. Anyway, I asked a guy, he was a cop, I think. I'm like, I tried to say it in Spanish, and I call it, where is the puta morena? And my wife whispers in my ear, you just asked him where the brown, let's say, prostitute is.
Oh dear.
Yeah, and there have been other times when I've just destroyed Spanish. But yeah, for the writing, one of my first videos, I tried to make a sales video for a local police training company. One of the owners was somebody I used to train with in martial arts, and he was just a beast of a guy, and a cop. He was like the official trainer for the St. Paul Police Department. And yeah, so we're making this video, and I'm like, how are we going to organize this information? Well, I had found a copywriting template by somebody who's now well known as sort of a con artist, a contrepreneur. Very good at selling himself, but it's just. And I took their information, I fit it into this template, and it was a mess. It was just like, this is not compelling at all. It ended up like 20 minutes long, and I don't think cops needed that long to make a decision on whether or not to train. So we made it, and I was like, this is hideous. Like, it was terrible. They were kind enough not to say anything, but then I made them like a 30-second teaser that just like had like 10 words about why to train. And I'm sure that was much more effective. So yeah, that was a disaster. Don't stick with somebody else's template. Use your gut. I've got a client who he got a template from Grant Cardone, and it's just like your standard kind of sleazy copywriting where you go, what does it start? What do they call that? A pattern interrupt. You say something really weird that people make people like, what? And then you continue.
Oh, right.
Yeah. And I'm like, don't do that. Like, this guy's sleazy. Like,
yes. Anyway. Well, I think we've had enough of that now that people have this detector that is well honed too.
You're right. Yeah.
This is no. Well, the same as like all the clickbait stuff and all of that.
Sure.
Like staying away from all of that. So you're going to stick to doing videos in English then? Is that?
Yeah.
No, I know I lived in Thailand for a while and I asked a few awkward questions that I later found out I was like, oh, that wasn't what I meant. So yes, the right word at the right time, right place, super important. Now, do you feel like as you're improving your writing, your business is improving, succeeding more? Do you think there's a correlation? Of course, I want you to say yes, but because I believe that's true, but I'm wondering if you notice that actually for real, like in real life, do you feel that there's a correlation?
I do indirectly. I see improvement in the way I speak because I have written it out enough times to see what's wordy and what's ineffective, or just write out like, this didn't go well, that couldn't go well. And that's as simple as like journaling, or rewriting your elevator pitch or whatever, or rewriting your own ads and copy. And and writing your own marketing is awful. I hate it. Like anybody else is no problem. But yeah, I've rewritten my website 7 or 8 times. I still don't like it, but each time, at least I'm getting a little closer to speaking clearly and truly about what I do and honestly what I want to do, even though I don't fulfill that yet.
Right. Sort of aspirational. Yes, I remember actually looking at your site quite a while ago and then looking at it recently in preparation for the interview. And yes, like from my perspective, after seeing it over time, there are definitely some really good copywritten nuggets, and the flow is better. And like I just saw lots of stuff, and I was like, wow, this is really good. I watched your video about these guys in this truck, and they're hauling these mats or something.
Sure, Dakota matting, yeah.
Yes, which is interesting. My husband has had to do matting jobs for different things, so I know a little bit about mats. So I'm like watching this thing and thinking about how you'd have to script that or what would be involved with that, and then thinking as you were talking about, you have to go on scene and can you get different shots? What were did you enjoy that project? Was it challenging? Tell us a bit about.
Sure, I love that project. That was probably the biggest one or the most important one this year. Just out of the blue, they found me on Upwork, which I don't recommend Upwork to anybody, but because you don't get snow leopards like this company, like it's, I don't know, it seemed like divine providence more than anything. But they wanted to cover this project, and your first inkling is they do mats. You point the camera at wooden mats, but they're really boring. So we on the drive down, we had to hurry because they had like one day that they wanted to do this thing, or the weather was supposed to be nice. And it did work out that way. And yes, the next day was like windy, or the day before was windy too. And we were flying a drone, so we didn't want that. And plus with microphones, that's the worst. It's just
yes.
We did a workaround for that for the interview. Anyway, so we're driving down there. And my videographer friend Corey, he's asleep, and I'm just like, I gotta figure this. We can't just do. And thinking, whose book was it? It might have been Story Brand by Donald Miller. And I was like, of course, the story is about people who get you out there. They make it possible to put up huge structures in the middle of pasture land in Kansas. And so I was like, we got to point camera at people as much as possible, but more than anything in their partnership, all the other companies that are around them and digging holes and putting up bridges.
Right.
And yeah, and that was the story. But then, it's a scripted project. So even the next day, while Corey's setting up for interviews, I'm revising my questions list. I'm like, what gaps need to be filled? But yeah, 20 minutes maybe to just pull out a piece of paper and start writing. These are the questions. Let's start here. Let's get to here. If you don't get this, let's circle back to it. Yeah, and I just ask questions and ask them to shoot from the hip, which for construction guys is like second nature.
Yeah.
Not to make them curse, but yeah. So and that turned out really well. I got what I needed. I wasn't 100% certain I had that until I saw it all in production. But yeah, we told this story of how they went out there and they were loved by the other companies and they were real easy to work with and they saved them a lot of trouble. So yeah, I love that one.
Yeah, it was good. I was just going to ask you something else and just totally blanked out. Oh, yes. So in you're writing your storyboards or doing the storyboards, writing scripts, all of that stuff, that's fine. Improving your writing, doing a little novel writing on the side. But then as far as written communication, we talked a little bit about marketing. You hate your marketing or you hate doing your marketing, but got to do it. That's right. It's hard. Self-promotion sometimes is challenging.
Sure.
But then there's also the writing required to even secure the work. The emails back and forth, text, whatever. How have you found, have you had to tweak your writing at all? Does it just come naturally, being able to communicate with customers, clients, that kind of thing?
Yeah. I think I've probably done in the past couple of years, at least 100 Upwork proposals. And I think I landed like 15 of them. So it's not a great batting average. But I compete on price. If I had any advice, this is in the book, what's that called? Captivate. This works. If you have any ground in common with this person, that's like one of my best clients, they sell probiotics, and I told them that I eat paleo. I'm well familiarized with the keto diet. I know quite a bit about cholesterol, and there would be no terminology that they use that I would be unfamiliar with, and that got me the interview. Yeah, and they're a fantastic client. Yeah, that happened. I know that happened at least a couple other times, and I was like, that's huge. You need that. You need their name. Beyond that, I mean, as far as Upwork goes, I don't spend a lot of time because they're low percentage anyway. It's if I can't offer them something that nobody else does,
right,
I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. But yeah, those at least did force me to get more and more succinct with those communications and to understand that it's not necessarily worth your time to spend a lot of time on them. Now, does that go for an actual job application? I don't know. I'm not actually that good at job applications, but for freelance work, yeah.
Right.
That's what I've learned.
Just communicate succinctly. Again, the right word at the right time, connecting with people.
Yeah.
Excellent. So have you had a mentor or somebody who's inspired you in the work that you're doing in your career? Like why video? Was there somebody that inspired you?
Well, I was a big YouTube nerd. Somebody, I mean, I don't know if there's anybody directly in the field of like creating commercials who I follow, which maybe I should. But as far as that goes, like I like David Lynch, just as movie and show director. I was like, I love the way he uses these visuals that hook you and they're mysterious. That he's good at the arousal of curiosity. And who else writes great copy? I mean, I always like Neville's stuff. I'm sure you do too. Yeah. Still read his emails, and that's rare. I usually just toss everything else. No, I've been thinking about that. I reached out for help for a local mentor through a Minnesota organization called SCORE, and I've been getting some assistance there. But I was asking about, honestly, their ideas for getting more clients.
Right.
So not about writing in particular.
So if somebody were wanting to try to get into the same video production, what would you recommend? So if you were talking to, say, your younger self, what do you wish you would have known, skills that you would have tweaked earlier or focused on?
Sure. I mean, connections are a big deal. There are only so many of these gigs. Having worked somewhere or knowing people who get these gigs, who are known for these gigs, that's an advantage I've never had, and I would certainly recommend that. But yeah, being able to write a script. It doesn't have to be hard. 2 columns, or you could even do the Hollywood format where you go line and then in parentheses what you're seeing. And you should know your way at least around a camera and around post-production software to know what's possible, and what's easy and what's not. And maybe familiarize yourself with rates. Like I had a friend, my videographer friend, he's like, even go work as a grip on a set and you'll learn so much. Just volunteer to be somebody's assistant for, it's not much money, but you're there and you see like the whole process. They've got this order of operations, and that gives them room for the creativity.
Right. So you also have another side project. Did you want to talk about that?
Which one?
Oh,
chronic pelvic pain? Is that the one you're thinking?
Yeah.
Sure.
Because you wrote a book for that?
Yeah, it's an ebook, but yeah, it does pretty.
Okay, well, that's considered a book, right?
Yeah.
It's writing in a book format that you're selling. And also you have some videos with that, which, did you have to do some scripting with that?
Absolutely, yes. Yeah, so a couple years ago I had chronic pelvic pain syndrome, and it stunk. It really hurt. I couldn't run. I couldn't chase my son when he was just starting to run. I'd done 8 years in mixed martial arts, and there's a joke in martial arts that there's not a million injuries. There's just one that travels around your body. And like a key to becoming a black belt eventually is just dealing with the one traveling injury more than anything. If you keep going, that's your biggest enemy, is this thing that hurts. So yeah, I'd popped ribs, I'd popped elbows and knees, and lots of dings. Only one that really stuck because I didn't tap early enough, and so I've got an elbow injury that if I really want to, I can get it going. But I was proud of my ability to rehabilitate injuries, and I was like, I'm gonna beat this. And so it turned out there was not a lot of good information on this condition. Doctors usually do surgery or drugs, and I was like, let's not do that unless we really have to. So I read everything I could and started to put it all together. But I finally discovered a missing piece after 6 or 8 months. It was that anxiety was a huge component of this. When I started attacking that directly, within 2 weeks I was running again. It was just like metaphysical.
Wow, that's great.
Amazing. Yeah, I was so thrilled. So I knew there was all this information it was not in one spot. There were some good books. What's her name? Anyway, there were some good books, but no books that were complete, no books that were really oriented toward men, and men don't want to talk about this. And prostatitis is huge, and it sounds like most of it is actually this condition. I was like, let's learn to make content. I'm gonna write this out, and then I'm gonna make it into a blog, and then eventually I'll do a video course on it. And so I did, and had to build a WordPress site, and oh man, I know you probably know about that. And I've done a few, but made practice copywriting, doing kind of a video on how to cure CPPS general broad overview. And the first thing it does is goes over the symptoms, because that's the biggest problem, or the first problem at least, is whether or not this is what you have and not like an STD. Video was cheesy but pretty effective, because it had a clear answer to people's questions that it got to right away. And then I did a stretching one, just with my stretching routine, mostly ripped off from those books, and it had an edition, and that's got, I think, 172,000 views now.
Wow.
Yeah, I think that's in 18 months, and that's the biggest one by far. So then I was like, do I want to write a separate book? I was like, I think I just want to, I don't know. I didn't want to stop giving it away for free. So I put all that edition in the book, but it's basically the content of the blog cleaned up better.
Right.
And started selling that, and then it's done pretty well. We make a few sales every week, and kind of a suggestion, if this stuff helps you, you could the book, have it all in one place, and that way they're not just paying me. They get something out of it, print it that way, right?
Right.
Or have it on their e-reader or phone. That's doing pretty. As far as the videos and scripting, I always script all of those. Because, I had to learn to sit and talk to a camera.
Right.
And I realized the easiest way to do that is to keep sentences short. And then I look at the script, and if there's a short sentence, I could deliver it. If it's like 4 lines, I'm going to flub it. And some of those you just have to fight through. But And then I would pick visuals that would substantiate that. If it's an abstract idea, like these 3 components come together, or these 2 things are mutually exclusive, then I'd make an animation based on that. Those are, I haven't put as much time into those in the past few months. I still make them, but I don't make these elaborate animations. I think I will for the next one, but they do better than I think, and I get a lot of questions and a lot of thank yous, so I'm glad I made them.
That's gratifying.
Yeah.
Neat. Well, it sounds like video and writing are connected. People that are wanting to get into this kind of career, they do need some sort of writing skills.
Definitely.
You don't necessarily have to be a novelist.
No.
You do need to be able to put words and ideas together.
Yeah.
And if somebody were to reach out to you, are you open to talking to people? Can they connect with you?
Sure. You can find me on LinkedIn, Ian Connel, IANCONNEL. I think the photo even has this shirt and sweater, so it'd be pretty easy to find. There are only a handful of others named Ian Connel, and I think they're like race car drivers and stuff. So
And if somebody is looking to get some video work done, they should contact you. You will put together a script for them.
Yeah.
And all their details.
Even if that's all they want, if it's just a script.
I saw that on your website, actually.
Yeah. I've sold more of those on Upwork than anything.
Okay.
Yeah. Just this morning, I was finishing a video that started as a script. And but I could, as Captain America says, I could do this all day. I could write those all day. And I mean, in some ways maybe it is easier than email or direct mail or that, because you have visuals and you're keeping your sentences simpler. And love to help.
Thank you, Ian. And thank you, listeners, for joining us today. If you're interested in learning more about video production, or you have some videos that you want perhaps Ian to create for you, you can contact Ian at ianconnell.com. I'll also put his information in the show notes for your reference. Until next time.